Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. Coming to you from the Long Valley Studio in Washington, Utah, I'm your host, Dave Markel, and this is episode 174. There's one thing about this show I never take for granted, and that's the level of trust it requires from the people who listen and from the people who decide they're ready to speak. This podcast was never meant to be polished or performative. It exists because real, unscripted truth needs a place where it can be held with care. One of the most meaningful aspects of SAS is that time and time again, the people you hear on this show begin as listeners. They've sat with these stories, recognized themselves in them, and then at some point, something shifts. A readiness, a courage, a decision that their voice matters too. That moment, when someone steps forward not to be heard, but to be honest, is where this show really lives and where healing begins to move forward, quietly but powerfully. My guest this week is Gemini. Her story unfolds in a sequence many survivors will recognize. First, the assault, then everything that followed. Gemini shares her experience with clarity and strength, including the aftermath and her experience at Saprea. Not as sound bites, but as lived reality. This is not an easy episode, but it is an important one. I'm grateful for Gemini's courage and for the trust she placed in this space. So settle in, and as always, listen with care. Here's Gemini. SAS listeners, I'm very pleased to have with me in the studio today, Gemini. I want to welcome you to the studio and thank you for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for, is to give my audience an opportunity to tell their story and share with others. Tell us about yourself, if you would, Gemini.
I live in Wisconsin. I am 38 years old. I currently have way too many animals. And I am obviously a sexual abuse survivor. Other than that, I pretty much I enjoy my animals. I enjoy reading, writing, listening to music.
And listening to podcasts, I take it. You found SAS.
Yeah, I like listening to podcasts. I find that sometimes if I have a long drive, sometimes those pass time quicker than listening to just music.
That's for sure. Yeah, I do the same. How did you find SAS?
After I had attended a retreat, I started doing some more research to find what was out there for a podcast for either just like trauma survivors, anything like that in general. And I found SAS through, I believe it was like Spotify.
And you just mentioned the retreat. And when you reached out to me, you brought that up. We're going to talk about that, correct?
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. For those of you who may not have ever heard me talk about it, Gemini is referring to the Saprea retreat. I've talked about it before. One of my previous guests has also been, and Gemini has a really great experience. Gemini, before we get to that, what are you able to tell us about your sex assault or rape experience?
I will say here that, like other survivors, I actually have very limited memory of everything that went on. I was around 9 or 10. It was my mom's boyfriend at the time. When she would leave, he would babysit a lot. That was obviously when the abuse was going on. So it was typically in my house. He was a classic groomer. He would let me listen to the music, the songs that I wasn't supposed to be listening to because they were not age appropriate. He'd always make sure that he had the candy that I liked, make sure I had that, had that in stock. He would bribe me with rides in his Mustang, all things to get me to like him. So that way I didn't tell.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact timeline of everything as far as how long it had occurred, but I do remember very vividly we were driving somewhere and my mom mentioned that she was considering marrying this guy. And all I can remember was, I don't know that I can handle that. I obviously don't want him in our lives full time. And that was when I disclosed during that conversation.
First of all, I want to tell you that I'm terribly sorry for the experience that you had with this man. Are you able to tell us more about disclosing to your mom?
Previously to a few years ago, I had thought she was completely on my side. Later found out that there was some things that she reported to the police that I was, I guess, shocked about. The way she phrased it and not necessarily blamed me, but put it back on me a little bit. So that was a little bit of a shock. I do know that she did report it right away. She went to him first, basically asked if it was true, and thankfully he did say it was true. And that was one thing I did have going for me, that he didn't try to deny it, didn't try to back out. That was when she went to the police. I did later find out that he didn't tell the whole truth, but he did at least confess to being part of it. So I do know that at that point that the police were involved in the statements, and I don't remember a whole lot about giving my statements to the police officers. I believe a lot of it was done in our home at the time, but I don't remember a whole lot about the questions they asked or how they asked them or anything like that. That's unfortunately blocked out of my memory.
Yeah, not uncommon. You probably have in your head a format or an idea of what it is that you wanted to express about that assault and how it impacted your life. Are you able to expound on that and what happened after all of this occurred?
I do know that mom did get me into therapy pretty much right away. Had some pretty good therapists and some ones that were not so great. Ones that basically, when I mentioned that I didn't want my little younger brother to come to family night, asked me if I didn't want him to come because he was going to confess that I had touched him as well. Came completely out of the blue, and I was just, no, I just didn't want him to come. So I was just placing that blame back on someone who had been victimized. So I went through obviously the good therapists and the bad therapists, and saw them pretty much from then until I turned 18. I was seeing one pretty much continuously / off and on. I was always in therapy for it. I did mention that I don't have much memories, but I do have one memory where I can literally see it like I'm in the room floating out above overhead. Like I'm in the corner of the room and I'm looking down at what had occurred. And I could tell you what I was wearing, what my bedspread was, what toys were on the floor. It's just that out of body experience that people talk about. And so that's what solidifies my brain that this did happen. This is real, despite not having much memories beyond that. And I know for a fact it's real, along with obviously just feelings and all that here. So around 2018, I basically said I had enough. I had enough with feeling the shame, with feeling alone, with feeling like no one would ever want me for who I am. So I started down a path of attempting to heal, and I went like I typically do, and I went full steam. I reached out to my former therapist. I started to see her again, just kind of tackling everything under the sun, but it wasn't feeling like enough. So I decided to pull the court records. I tracked down those, and they were from another county. So I had to contact that county's police department. I had to pay for the records to be mailed to me. And then I went to the courthouse and got the court statements. Like I said, I went pretty much full throttle. And I started to look into what was reported to have happened, what was the timeline, what did he actually receive, because I honestly didn't really know a lot of this. When I read the police report, the event that I had just mentioned was not told in the way that I 100% knew it happened. I was like, no, I don't have a lot of memories, but I do have this memory. I do know it's not a false memory, so I know that that's not true. At that point, it was the first time I actually started getting angry about the abuse, because I had always was under the impression that he told everything, that he confessed everything, that he didn't want me to have to go to court. In reality, he was saving his butt because he didn't tell the truth of what actually had occurred. That was when, at that time, I couldn't afford to go to therapy anymore, so I had done some research, and I found a local sexual assault crisis center. And they offered free therapy and free support groups. So I started going to the support group, where I think we had about 4 to 5 other women, kind of similar ages, similar stories, where we had like a once a week or once every other week meeting with them. And it was just really nice to start not feeling so alone. So then I was also seeing the therapist as well, just because I needed the extra one-on-one support. And I talked to her and I said, I have this crazy idea. And she kind of looked at me, because by now she'd kind of figured out that once I have an idea, it's pretty much going to happen. Whatever I need to do, it's going to happen. And I said, I want to write him a letter and I want to express what I think. So I did. I wrote him a letter, and I basically was like, despite everything, I am very independent. I bought a house when I was 27 on my own. I have animals. I have a job. I'm going to school. I have a car that's paid off. I'm doing well despite what you did. And I got very lucky. I reached out to my friend. I'm like, I don't obviously want him to know my address. And the only reason I knew his address was due to the fact that he was on the registry. So he has to report his address. And she's like, go ahead, use my address. I don't care. So I mailed him, and I'm like, I'm not going to hear back from him. Well, the night of a group meeting was the day we were supposed to tell our stories. We weren't supposed to tell our stories up until this point. Obviously, we could share tidbits and the effects of it, but the day where we actually shared stories, I had taken the next day off of work because I knew it was going to be a tough night. I had scheduled, supper with a friend. I had plans to make sure that the next day was going to be a little easier. So I got through the meeting. I'm feeling drained. I go outside. I look at my phone. 3 missed calls, 1 voicemail, and 2 text messages, all from the same person. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And that was the day he got the letter back from him. And I was like, I cannot handle it tonight. I am too mentally wrung out. I feel like a sponge that's just been wrung completely dry. It's not safe for me to get the letter tonight. Do not. And she's like, well, I'm going to be going to work the next morning. I'll be driving past your house. Are you okay if I drop it off? And I'm like, absolutely. So she dropped it off for me the next morning. And again, I had off. And I went and got it. And I sat there and I stared at it. And I stared at it. And stared at it some more. I put it aside. And then an hour later, I looked at it again. And then I finally opened it. It was a very shocking letter filled with a lot of remorse, a lot of him sharing that his life is not completely unscathed from this, because he has a harder time finding a job. He was going to get married, and he had disclosed with her, and she was going to still marry him, but he decided he wasn't ready. Things like that. It just basically said, I'm sorry, without feeling as just fake. I'm sorry. Those words don't mean anything to me. Showing what you have to deal with because of your actions is what I want to know. So I read the letter and I was, okay, that was not quite what I was expecting, but it was pretty cool. I had let my group know that I got the response, and I mean, they knew because they were there with me in the parking lot when I saw the messages, and I'm like, I have a feeling I know what this is about. So they kind of knew that I had gotten it back, and obviously next week I told them and went over this. And I told my counselor at the time, I'm still just not satisfied. There's still a part of me that says I want more. I shouldn't want more, but I do. Mm-hmm. And she's like, what are you thinking about, Gemini? I'm like, obviously you know me a little too well already. I'm like, I very much want to see him face to face in a very safe way. And I don't want to meet him at McDonald's or a coffee shop. That's not what I'm looking for. And she's like, well, I would agree to hosting him here. So I sent him another letter. I said, these are the dates that will work for me. These are the times. This is the phone number that you can contact. Gave him her phone number, her voicemail, and again, waited. And I waited and waited. And then all of a sudden, finally one day, I get a call from her saying, yep, he called. He's scheduled. It's May 18th. And I'm like, oh, so pretty much the day I didn't want to do it because my birthday is on the 24th. So that's really not the birthday gift that I wanted. But what do you do? So she did things that I didn't really think about because at the time it was a sexual assault crisis center. And I didn't think about this, but she did. She had arranged for absolutely no clients to be there during the time frame that he would arrive because she did not want him sitting next to someone, which I wouldn't have even thought about that. Mm-hmm. So I had got there early. We waited in her office for him, and he actually was like 15 minutes early. She had gotten the call saying he was there, and she's like, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, "No." But I guess we're going to do this. So she's like, "Do you want to be in the room first, or do you want him in the room first?" And I said, "Absolutely, he needs to be in the room first. He needs to be sitting. He needs to be waiting for me. I need to be the one that when I walk in the room, I'm taking control." So I walked into the room, longest walk ever, to their kitchen, and he was there. And I very much vividly remember thinking, he's kind of small. He's just a regular man. He's not to diminish what he did, but he is just a regular guy. He's not this gigantic monster that, since the last time I saw him was 10, we're talking 20 some years later, he looks a lot different. And obviously he's gotten much older. So that was the first thought before I sat down. My therapist set the ground rules. This is supposed to be a nice conversation, no yelling, screaming, swearing, stuff like that. And then she basically just let us go, and it lasted an hour. And I asked him a lot of questions. And everyone's like, "Why did you ask him why he did it?" I'm like, "No, because what is he going to say?" There's no answer for that. I more asked him, I think this is when I found out about him being married. How did it affect him? I wanted to know that. I brought up the memory. I said, "This is not the memory that I have." And he said something really surprising. He was like, "If that is the memory you have, I want you to trust that memory. I want you to realize that your memory is better," and that I was backed into a wall. And so I lied. Because I don't have much memory of everything, I don't know how much more he lied about as far as what was disclosed and what all went on, because I just don't have the memories. I think the scariest thing that he said that really hit home was, he's like, "I am so glad you told when you did, because I felt like I was going to get worse, that I was going to do something worse to you." And I remember just kind of going, okay, what do you say to that? How do you respond to someone openly saying that they were going to abuse you more and make it worse than it already has been? That obviously 20 years later, I'm still struggling, that you're telling me it would have, just. So that was probably the biggest shock and one of the biggest takeaways of that. I did thank him. I did thank him for coming in. And I said it pretty much point blank. I'm like, "You came into a place where everything about you is scum. This is not a place where you are welcomed with open arms. You're not welcomed as an individual because of what you did, but you were willing to walk through those doors, and you are willing to do this." And so I did thank him for that. And I'm like, that's all you're getting thanked for, of course. Mm-hmm. But I do appreciate this, because it was an extremely, extremely big part for me to heal. To see him as an ordinary guy and not as a huge, massive monster, just kind of put into perspective. Yes, he did an absolutely terrible thing, and I will never forgive him for it. I will always have the lasting effects of it. But he's not the worst person in the entire whole universe. He's not, and he's not a biblical or fiction monster. Mm-hmm. He is a guy who made a really, really bad decisions and did affect my life. At the end, he is a guy. He's a human being.
Gemini, do you feel like there was a level of restorative justice that occurred because of that conversation you had with him? Even more so than the criminal justice system provided?
Well, the criminal justice system gave him 3,000 hours of community service, and that was it. So he didn't really get much criminal justice, but it was also due to the fact that he didn't make me go to court. And quite frankly, if he had made me go to court and report it at that time, I was not willing to speak out. I was not willing to share. I was not vocal.
Right.
So he would have gotten away with nothing.
Sure.
So in a way, him confessing and getting that, he ended up with more punishment than if he had made me attempt to fight it. So yeah, so as far as restorative for that, I think what really just, for me, showing him that I was powerful and that I was doing this and that he took away a lot from me, but he didn't take away everything, I think really did help me just move past at least a part of the trauma. So whether it be restorative for him, whether he had any effects from doing this meeting, I don't know. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I don't care what he got out of it or he didn't get out of it.
Well,
it's not for me to care about what he feels at this point.
It's amazing to me that he even agreed to it. It's extremely rare. Most perpetrators don't want to talk to the person they abused, and to make even some level of admission is pretty rare. So for that aspect, I'm grateful that he did that and that it did have some positive impact for you. More than anything, I'm sorry for the experience that you had to go through with him in the first place, but I do understand your perspective that, yeah, it provided a level of some sort of justice for you, but I don't know that you would ever get full justice, right?
Well, and that's the reality, is that even if he had gone to jail for 20 years, it doesn't change how I am.
Right.
And I don't diminish the people who want their perpetrators to go to jail, and that's what makes them feel better. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing that says, oh, you went to jail and you feel better. That's no wrong feeling. It's not.
Mm-mm.
Just for me, it was more of, you did something in exchange for me that was very uncomfortable for you to help me. And that to me was more of a justice than if I had found out he had gone to jail for 10 years. And I think he suffered because he was complaining of his 10 years of probation. And I was just like, boo-hoo. I don't care.
Well, and that part of this whole thing is pretty typical too. But the whole offender mentality is that the damage to themselves is more impactful than the damage they ever did to anyone else. That narcissistic kind of aspect to this in the perpetrator personality. That's sad that you had to hear that, that he would try and make it sound like, oh, I'm the one who's hurt here.
I feel like he definitely brought it up. He definitely brought up the things that were negative for his life from the experience, but I feel like he did keep it pretty, yes, this happened to me, but worse things were for you. So like he brought it up, and I think because I asked him specifically, how did this affect you negatively? I wanted to know. So yes, he did complain. He did somewhat make it about himself, but I do feel like he did it because I asked. I wanted to know what occurred for him because of what happened.
Well, and that makes sense too. I mean, those are questions that you need answered. And the fact that he was willing to even open up to that aspect of it is kind of amazing to me. Yeah. What was the impact of all of that? Tell me what the aftermath of all of that felt like for you.
It felt like a huge sense of power was returned to me. It felt like, if I could do this, if I could sit down in the room with the person who sexually abused me as a child and made as much negative effects, I could do pretty much anything. And it turned out that obviously it wasn't planned at that time, but a year to the date of sitting down with him was the day I left for Scotland to do a study abroad program for school. But that was the first time I had ever traveled alone in my entire life on an airplane ever.
Wow.
And I decided apparently my first time on an airplane is going to Scotland on my own. I did end up going to Canada first, and then Canada to Scotland just because I visited a friend. I obviously do everything alone. But once I got to Scotland, I had to get my way to the house alone. I was significantly older than most of the students there because I was in my 30s. So I ended up having to do a lot alone. But I would hop on the bus and I'm like, let's go to this city that's going to take me 3 hours to get there on the bus. And I'm going to change it 4 different times because I feel empowered now. I feel like I can do this. I feel like I can do this. And I don't think I would have gone had this not occurred.
Wow. That's quite an impact.
Yeah.
To be able to get to that point and feel that strong. That's so good. Tell me
It
more.
just gave me a sense of that empowerment. And that was actually the first time that the retreat ever came up in my mind. I honestly, because of the length of time, I don't have any memory of how I found the Saprea retreat. At that time, it was called Unique, a unique foundation, a unique retreat. And I had applied, I had gotten approved, and that was when also Scotland came up. And I'm like, let's see here, go to Utah for a week or Scotland for a month. Fortunately, Scotland won.
Yeah, I think I would have made that decision too. Although Saprea is important, I get that. A month in Scotland, yeah, I'd jump at that chance.
I was like, I'm getting closer to being out of school. I don't know if I'll have a chance to go next year, which I didn't because it was 2020. And I'm like, I have to take this opportunity to go. And then by the time I left, I ended up scheduling my birthday in Scotland. But by the time I left and figured out my plane tickets, I didn't even realize it. And I'm like, oh, this is May 18th that I'm leaving. And this is the same day. Seemed a little bit too much to be coincidence. So I was just like, this feels right. I ended up going to Scotland instead, obviously. And then next year, I was like, I'll just fly next year. Well, 2020. I wasn't flying anywhere in 2020, unfortunately. So then I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to do it in 2021. 2021 came up. I messaged them. I said, I'm really interested in coming. I've applied before. I'm familiar with the processing, but I'm just curious, are you guys wearing masks during sessions or during the retreat? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, no. Then unfortunately, I'm not coming. Because I had a really hard time with wearing masks, with having PTSD and anxiety and panic attacks. It was just, I can't see myself healing in that environment while wearing a mask.
Sure. That makes perfect sense to me. Yeah.
So I was like, well, I guess it's not happening again this year. I don't know what the exact excuse was for 2022 or 2023 or 2024. I think it somewhat slipped from my mind. It somewhat fell to the wayside. And then probably about 6 to 8 months ago, I'd heard about this other retreat. And while I know 2 of the people, one of the founders, I know one of the persons that goes there and attends, and she actually was an intern at my school. So I'm like, I feel comfortable. So I had applied back at Saprea, but then I remembered them telling me basically, we can't give you our location. You have no cell phone reception. You have no internet connection. We can't tell you where you are, and no, you can't contact anyone. And I was going, so that option or going somewhere that I knew 2 people. I knew it was legit because I knew the people running it. So I had applied for that one. They only host theirs once a year, and they can only take 8 people. So I was not accepted, and I was really bummed because I'm like, it just feels like the right time for me. So I reached out to my current therapist, and I'm like, I'm really stuck because I don't know if I want to apply back to Saprea or not, because I just not sure if I feel comfortable with this. I'm not sure I feel comfortable with traveling to a state, having someone unknown pick me up, drive me to an unknown location. I don't have any cell phone to contact people. That just seems terrifying. And she's like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, I just don't know. And I kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking about it. And I finally like, you know what? We're going to do this. So I went through the whole application process. I reached out to them, and then they actually had something new this year where they have like a Q&A where they actually have the staff come on and you can join either if you've been accepted or if you're just thinking about accepting. They come on, they say, we'll be on for an hour, we'll ask any questions. If you have any questions, we'll go over some retreat, we'll introduce you to some of the staff. And of course, this is after I got accepted, but I was like, okay, I feel a little better. And then as I was getting closer, I was trying to figure out my flights. And I was not finding any flights that were going to get there on Monday morning and leave like Thursday night on the time frames that they wanted us there. So I was like starting to panic. So I'm like, I cannot really afford a whole lot of hotel costs. I don't really want to be in a hotel before and after. And so I reached out to my friend. I'm like, do you have any suggestions of hotels in the area? She's like, why don't you just come visit us? I'm like, are you sure? She's like, yeah. And then the cheapest flight was Saturday. So I reached out to her again. I said, can I come Saturday? If I can't, I'll just come Sunday. I'll stay somewhere else. At this point, it's saving me $300. So I'll stay at a hotel then at that point. She's like, no, you can come Saturday. So I arrived at her house Saturday, stayed with her Saturday, Sunday, and part of Monday. On Monday, I was picked up by the random person and loaded into a black SUV and driven into the mountains. We did have cell phone reception up until probably about 15, 20 minutes till we got there because they are located within a mountain range. And there's literally mountains on three sides of you. They're like nestled right into a valley. And on the drive over, me and the other girls, we were all kind of talking that we all had the same thoughts. You know, this is really scary to be picked up by someone you don't know, driven to an unknown location. It's terrifying. And one of the staff told us a story about how they had a police officer that had attended, and she had gone through taking a picture of the license plate, sending it over to them, having them run the registration while they're still at the airport. She checked with like the Better Business Bureau. She contacted like the city hall. And that's just how the level is to when you're dealing with survivors. Yeah. You're dealing with people who every fiber in us is don't trust people.
Absolutely. You're on high alert.
So I was telling them that, and she's like, oh, we've heard this a lot of times, and that's why we started the Q&As. That's why we started doing what we could, because our location is a secret for a very valid reason, and I'm okay with that. She's like, so we've done everything that we could at this point with the question and answers, and I'm like, no, I do think it helped. And then when I had reached out to my friend too, she's like, oh yeah, I know Saprea. I drive past their office every day on my way to work. And I'm like, really? You couldn't have told me about this 2 years ago when I was talking about coming to visit you and staying. I would have known this ahead. And then when I was visiting her, we ended up going somewhere that we ended up passing the Saprea building. I'm like, okay, I feel so much better now. I'm ready in Utah, so I don't really have any choice anymore. I'm going. But now I feel better myself. Because now I've gotten the validation that I needed to say, okay, it's real. So we got into the mountains, and it was just completely stunning. This is fall, and the colors were just pretty much right at their prime. It was just completely just red and gold and just absolutely stunning, and trees everywhere. And we pulled into the driveway, and I think two of us said it at the exact same time. You know what? I think we're okay with being kidnapped. We're fine. Because the house that they have this retreat in is completely and utterly the most beautiful house I've ever seen in my life. It's massive, but it's not cold and massive. It's beautifully done. And so we're like, yeah, you know what? We're fine. We'll be kidnapped. That's okay. We'll stay here. And I think that was just kind of that first step of, okay, I think we're safe. It feels okay at this point. And obviously it was still a little scary. We out of the car. She's like, guys, leave your bags, everything here. We'll take them up to your rooms. And so yeah, they took all our bags up to our rooms for us. When you walk in, there was like this big, massive fountain in the middle of the hallway. She's like, so if you ever get lost, just listen for the fountain, and you'll get to the front of the house. So they do their little introductions, and then they inform us that we have two different groups, Group A and Group B. And they typically do it by age, usually, which to me was pretty smart because people of different ages have different life experiences. And so it was pretty nice to have the groups separated. They had the welcome. They went over how everything was going to go. And then we started our programming. They did keep us separate in groups for some of the smaller projects, and then also the topics that were hard topics. The ones that were a little lighter, we had the whole group all together. but I really loved that they put the smaller groups in for the harder classes. Having a smaller group, first of all, just by the numbers, but then also just having a smaller group of people you have to be vulnerable with. We have 15 participants. So our group had 7, the other group had 8. The programming that they did was honestly very trauma-informed. They very much knew what they were doing. For example, one of the nights was, the first one was sexual health, and then they had our support group right after. That to me was genius. Take probably the hardest topic that most of us are going to have in this entire week and pair it with that support group where you can decompress and you can talk to people and you get that peer-to-peer support as well as from the staff, was honestly genius.
Yeah. Wow.
The activities that they had were amazing. One of the first activities that we had was called Kintsugi, where we got to select a ceramic bowl, and we had to break it, which was really scary for me because I don't like breaking things. I'm always afraid of, once I break it, I can't take it back. So it was more of a challenge for me and the mentally side of things, that I could break this, I could do this, and I'm going to be able to fix it. So it wasn't just breaking a bowl. It wasn't just that for me. After you break the bowl, you glue it together with epoxy and you mix gold flakes into it. So then you have the bowl, which was pretty before, but now prettier because it's got the gold lining through it. So that symbolism of you may be broken, but you're still beautiful. You can still be put back together. A lot of the girls had really great symbolisms of, well, there's this one piece missing that I just can't get in there. And you know what? That's okay. It's still a bowl. It still can hold things. It is still beautiful. There's a piece missing. That's okay. Just that activity was more than just breaking a ceramic bowl and putting it together. It was the symbolism of it all. Some of the other classes or the activities that we had was yoga. People know what yoga does for healing. I don't think I need to go a whole lot into that one. They had art journaling. Then my next favorite activity was drumming. And I was surprised that I liked the drumming because I do suffer with what's called misophonia. It's a noise processing order, and most of the time people hear about it is when people are chewing and you get so enraged. I don't have it with chewing, but I have it with repetitive noises. So I was like, don't know how I'm going to handle this. And I was really timid at first. I was banging it just lightly. And then during our second go around, she's like, I want you to pick your beats. I'm going to start out with some music, and then you're going to pick your own beats and then just listen to everyone else's music. And as I was doing my beat, I felt these extremely strong emotions. And I don't know if it was anger, because I wasn't angry, but something was stirring in me. And I started hitting that drum so hard that I was afraid I was going to break it, but I just have to do this. And that's not who I am typically. I'm very much just kind of soft, and I don't really want to, no, I'm good. So like I talked with the bowl, like I didn't want to break a bowl. Like, what's wrong with breaking a bowl? It's not a big deal. Yeah. So I remember hitting that drum harder and harder and harder. And I felt all these emotions just rising to the surface. And when she called to stop, I was like, no, wait, I still had more to go. And then afterwards, one of the people that was too down for me, she was kind of looking at me like this. And I was just like, what's wrong? She's like, that was kind of scary. I could feel that from over here, and I had to stop drumming because I could just feel the emotions just exploding. And she's like, I couldn't continue. I literally could not handle those feelings that I was getting from you. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, no, don't be. She's like, there was just so much going on that especially from you, that I just was like, I don't know if I can, she had to take a moment. And one of the girls across was like, she's like, you really got into that, didn't you? I'm like, I did actually. So just the experience was really cool. Our third set was more just average drumming, but that second one was the one where I could just feel just so much going on, so much stirring. The next one that really resonated with me again It's kind of funny because everything that I am is more quiet, more reserved, more kind of, it is what it is. It's, you don't have to get angry. I don't like feeling angry. I don't like feeling upset type of frustration. Like, I don't like feeling those feelings, so I avoid them at all costs. So you'd think that I would get really into the yoga, into the Tai Chi, into the sound healing. You think I'd get into those, and those are all the ones that I'm like, this is cool. But so the last one that I really liked was called Muay Thai. In the real world, Muay Thai, unfortunately, I found out is more of a men's fight club. I did not realize that what we had was a little different. So we started out, and I was just like, I don't really want to hit someone, even if it's just the pads. What if I miss? What if I knock them off balance? What if I, all this stuff? And so, like, I first started hitting, and it was just like tap, tap. She's like, harder. I'm like, no, I'm good. And then she's like, do you want to try the kick? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't want to do that. And then I tried it. And I'm like, oh, okay. This is not so bad. And then I did it again, the punching. And I started kind of picking up. And I was, okay, this is pretty cool. And then our last challenge for the day was we had to do 100 punches. And I did that. And I was like, this is really cool. And I later found out from one of the staffs that she mentioned to kind of like my go-to person. She's like, you should have seen Gemini. I didn't recognize her in there. She was just going at it. And I did. I felt that. I felt so powerful again. I felt so in charge. I felt like, I've got this. I do have some power behind me.
That's so
Despite
good.
never doing it before and not being in shape to do it, because it took a lot out of you. But like, it just felt in all of the girls, you could just tell they were all on highs from doing this thing. It was just so amazing to even see my other participants. There was one girl who had an arm injury, so she could only use one arm. So I'm like, oh, that kind of sucks for her. She's got to do 100 times in one arm, and she did it. She did the 100 times all on her, one arm, and she left, and she was so empowered as well. It was just really cool to see, because I was with the younger group. I was kind of towards the older side of the group, so like a couple of them were younger, and it was just really cool to see these younger girls feel so empowered and just so powerful and brave. That for me, I think I got a lot out of seeing them, that experience as well as my own.
Yeah.
So for activity, the ones that I really liked, the classes were extremely informative. They broke it down in such a way that someone who has the knowledge of psychology and how the brain works in a lot of ways, I even learned new things. I learned about creating new neural pathways that was recently something that they thought that as an adult, you can't create new neural pathways. Your neural pathways are set as a child, and they discover that you can set new neural pathways as an adult. And I think it's called like neuroplasticity, if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yep, that's correct.
So learning about that and trauma and the nervous system, we learned about like restorative sleep. We learned about the 3 healing practices, understanding shame and resiliency, self-compassion. We did coping skills. We did mindfulness, the sexual health, healthy connections. They covered everything. And the way that they had the structure of the timing, that they had breaks after the ones that, the topics that were a little trickier, the way that they separated the groups into the smaller groups for the harder topics. I think they should probably buy a stock in Kleenex, because they had Kleenex every square inch of that house. The rooms were built in such a way that even though we were sharing rooms, the head would be on this side, and then your foot would be here, and then the next bed, the foot would be there, and the head would be on the other side. So you have that distance even with that. They had curtains on the bed. They had, the bathroom was one door into the sink area, and then a door into the toilet, and a door into the shower. So you could have someone showering, using the toilet, and using the sink at the same time. They had the curtains across the bed, so you had your privacy. They had like shelves where you could plug your stuff in, and they had fans to do that sound. They had all the stuff that if you need sleep masks, or you needed this, or you need earplugs, they had all of that available. All of our food was provided. They had a chef that made home cooked meals. I've never eaten better in my entire life. And I am a fairly picky eater, and I ate pretty much everything.
That's amazing.
They always had snacks and drinks and teas and coffees available to us at all times. They provided a water bottle for us right when we got there in case someone didn't bring one. You know, because they encourage us to stay hydrated because a lot of people are coming from, like myself, I'm coming from an area that's lower elevation. I had to drink a lot of water to not be sick. Mm-hmm. So like, they made sure we kept hydrated. And the biggest takeaway that I had from the retreat with everything that I talked about is I am a person that very much would prefer not to be seen. I don't like to draw attention to myself for a lot of things. I never really felt worthy of having attention on me. And during our first support group, I kind of admitted that I'm really struggling with feeling like I'm fitting in here, and I'm doing it to myself. So it's not that anyone's being mean. I'm excluding myself. And I feel like I'm annoying people. I feel like people don't want to be around me when it's actually me that's doing it. And by being able to open up to that, it changed so much for me. It allowed myself to realize that I do deserve to be loved. I do deserve to have friends that treat me right. I do deserve this retreat. I do deserve to have to come here and be treated like a royalty person while healing. I do deserve that. And so, like, when you bring 15 women into one spot and you say, get along with each other for 3 days, if you've ever hung around a group of girls long enough, you know that doesn't always work out, especially when you're taking people from all over the world and all different walks of life and all different experiences and all different personalities, and you're saying get along.
Yeah.
But we all did. It was just because we all shared that common trauma. We all knew what it was like to feel alone, to feel not understood, and to feel like we're the only people in this world that are even though we know we're not. So I think because we went into this knowing we all were struggling, instead of isolating ourselves, we banded together. And by not having internet, no one could escape on their phones. No one could go online. So to me, the first day was hard. And then by the second day, I just left my phone. I don't care. I didn't want to deal. I didn't want to touch it. Because I was too interested in having that social interaction. I was interested in being in the moment. And it only took me a day. I mean, one day of not being able to get into the real world to be like, I don't really miss it that much. Mm. So Saprea is such a unique place. They just, it's Max and Shalane Maxfield. I might be saying their names wrong. So I believe I can't think of their names right now, but they are the ones that created it. They built the house specifically for the retreat. It was built with such comfort and just with even being as large as it was built with comfort in mind. There was chairs everywhere. There was little nooks and crannies. There was a phone room that you could go into, shut the door, and you could call out. It was just made to be such a powerful experience. And also when we got there, we were gifted with, I don't know if you're familiar with the brand Minky Couture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They actually donated 2,500 of their one of their biggest size, one of their most plush blankets. They donated 2,500 of them to Saprea.
Wow.
So we are gifted with this big monster blanket that was soft as anything.
Yep.
I didn't know about the brand. I didn't know who they were, the cost, or anything like that. And after I found out, I was even more impressed. But just the fact that they also donated. There were so many people that donated for us. Mm. For people, like, for once, we're treated like we are special. And we're not damaged. We're not just a damaged person. We're not just an abuse victim or
Yeah.
someone who deserves loving and caring and the nice items that many of us probably couldn't afford to buy, but they did that for us.
That's amazing.
And that goes for Unique, that goes for the Maxfields, that goes for the Minky, that goes for anyone that is even put 1 cent into it, into Saprea, knowing what they do, because Saprea also offers, like, I think it's like hundreds or thousands of hours of free resources online that you can go on to, not even being a participant of the retreat, and you are able to get those resources at any time that you want.
I knew about Saprea. I mentioned that to you when we first started talking because of Unique. I have a friend that is a Unique makeup distributor, and for those of you maybe who don't know what Unique is, they manufacture makeup and skincare products. And that's why, as you mentioned before, the retreat even used to be called the Unique Retreat. I'm not real sure about the specifics of how they changed the name to Saprea, but yes, I knew about it. I knew that there were really good reports, but I've never heard the detail until you've come on this show and talked to us about the retreat. Tell me what your recommendation is to anybody that qualifies to have the opportunity to go. What would you say to them?
So I do want to mention Saprea. The name came out because they wanted a word that was separate from any brand, and they wanted a word that didn't mean anything different in different languages. They
Uh-huh.
wanted a word that was universally the same across the board. So that's how they came up with Saprea. As far as my recommendation, absolutely just go. You are very much worthy of this. If you are a survivor, the only requirement is you have to be a survivor of child sexual assault on over 18 years or younger. Other than that, that's it. They don't ask you to tell your story unless you don't have to share any details that you don't want. You
Right.
have to get to Utah, and that's it. Everything else is included. It's 4 days. It's the longest and most shortest week of your life. It's settled into this beautiful area that even just being outside is healing. I was able to walk around because they have a little bit of acreage where it's all fenced in, so you can walk in and just feel safe. I'd go out walking at 6 o'clock in the morning when it was pitch black outside, and I felt safe because it was fenced in. I had nothing to worry about. They spared no expense to make it comfortable, and you deserve it. You deserve this. You deserve this. It's amazing.
I do want to qualify that it is for females only.
At this time, unfortunately, it is. I
Yeah.
do know that because I brought it up because I'm like, this is a little disappointing to me that this is something here that's not offered to males. I know that they are heavily in the works being able to do it. The problem is that all of their materials that they give out is all female centered at this point. So I do know that it is something here that they are very strongly and heavily working towards being able to offer this for males. I know that they are offering like a couple of kosher retreats coming up. So that'll
Awesome.
be really, really a good experience for someone who is kosher.
All right. That's awesome. So good. Gemini, this has been nothing but a pure pleasure for me. Even hearing the atrocities and horrific parts, the strength and the fortitude that you've demonstrated, your courage, it means a lot to me. It's wonderful in a very empowering way. I'm so glad that you made the decision to reach out to me and to come on this show and not only talk about your rape and sexual assault experience, but your experience with Saprea and how that has made such an impact on your healing.
Yeah, no, and I really do appreciate the opportunity because I don't feel like Saprea is heard about enough, and they are very much wanting people to use their resources, and they have absolutely no qualms about being shared, and they want to help more people. As of to date, they've helped about 6,000 survivors just at retreat alone. They want that number to be higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jim and I've emphasized this, but I can't say it enough. This has been an amazing experience, and I'm grateful and thankful that you've come on the show. I close out pretty much every conversation with this question and would like to get your input on this. After we're done here and we leave this conversation, this is going to have an impact on your life too. Just the fact that you joined me and that you've shared your story with who knows how many people will hear this. But that makes an impact. What will you do when we are done to take care of yourself, not only for the rest of today, but also in the coming days, weeks, and months? And you think back on this experience and maybe even have some implicit memories that come to mind that you didn't even know were there, but came out as a result of being on this show. What will you do with those memories? How will you take care of yourself?
I have always been a huge advocate for self-care. Lining up those, like after knowing if I'm going to have an experience that is going to be possibly triggering, possibly emotional, I make sure that I have my self-care practices in place, whether it be my art, hanging out with my animals. I like to ride, someone else schedule rides, or I'll schedule dinner at my favorite restaurant to be like, hey, I did something that was hard, and this is my treat to myself to kind of say I accomplished this. So obviously when there's the random ones that come up, you can't plan for those. But I've overall been pretty good, especially since Saprea. Previously, I would probably have crawled into bed and just been, just going to go to bed now. I'm just going to save this day. Since then, I've turned to journaling. I've turned to art when I'm having those moments. Right. So that is my current plan, is if something comes up, obviously, that I couldn't plan for, I do now I'm more likely to turn to my art or turning to journaling or turning to something that's productive in a way that makes me happy. It's not just crawling into bed and crawling under the covers anymore.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So helpful. This entire episode is going to be helpful. I'm really looking forward to getting this out there and having my audience hear everything that you've experienced through the healing process of Saprea. Jim and I thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a wonderful experience.
Thanks. Hopefully somewhere down the road we can do this again. Love to get caught up with you sometime and have you give us an update.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thank you, Gemini.
Thank you so much.
That does it for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. As I close out this conversation, I want to acknowledge what it took for Gemini to tell her story. Sharing an experience like this isn't about revisiting the past. It's about claiming your voice and your truth. Gemini did that here with courage, honesty, and a clear commitment to her own healing. This episode reminds us that sexual assault doesn't end with the assault itself. What comes after, the responses, the systems, the spaces we're asked to move through, matters. Gemini's experience at Saprea is part of that continuum, and her willingness to name it out loud and encourage others to share a similar experience is a powerful act of truth-telling. Gemini, thank you for your trust, your strength, and your voice. And to everyone listening, thank you for holding this space with care. Please remember to do your part to help bring justice to victims and survivors. A great way to do this is to start by believing, and to help normalize the conversation about the realities of interpersonal violence. Because the truth is, we all know someone who's experienced rape or sexual assault. We'll see you next week.